So there we are, the annual charity gala. My dad's pride and joy. And by pride, I mean he uses it as a platform to show off his spawn like we're prize-winning Labradors at Crufts. Black tie, champagne fountains, and more ego than an Oxford debate team on coke. Whole thing's dressed up like it's for a noble cause. Raising funds for displaced communities. Or some other vague slogan that looks good on a banner, but let's be real. It's just rich people clapping for each other over salmon blinnies. I'm stood near the back, still in uniform. Combat boots, creased trousers, ceremonial jacket, the works. Because I'm a soldier, see? A proper one. Not a paintball and flex on Instagram type. Actual service. Real deployments. But sure, Karen, tell me more about your mindfulness retreat in the Cotswolds. I'd come straight from base. Shuffled my entire rota just to make it here. Because apparently family is important, especially when there's a photographer from the Evening Standard floating about. And I thought, you know what? Let me play the good daughter. Make a bit of an effort, show face, possibly neck a Prosecco, and survive the night with only minimal internal bleeding. Dad's up on the stage, doing his I built this from the ground up speech for the 11th time this year. Everyone's pretending to be enthralled, nodding like dashboard ornaments. I swear one bloke near the cheese table was doing a Sudoku. Now, I should mention, my family are the epitome of performative middle-class nonsense. My brother's in finance, which apparently means he can talk uninterrupted for 6 minutes about interest rates and still not say a single useful thing. My sister, wellness coach, used to be a vape influencer. Now she sells $90 candles infused with ancestral wisdom. And me? I decided to serve my country, wear a uniform, deal with actual trauma instead of pretending to heal it with lavender, oil, and organic lentils. But that didn't quite fit Dad's narrative of success, did it? So I'm at the back, quiet, holding my coat because the cloakroom was full and apparently veterans don't get hangers. I'm sipping a flat Bucks Fizz, smiling through the pain, and waiting for the speech to end so I can do the standard kiss on the cheek, take a photo and leave with dignity routine. But no, of course not, because that would be civilized. Instead, he turns to the crowd, mic in hand, spotlights burning, and says, I'm proud of all my children, except that lowly soldier over there. Oh, fabulous. Not my daughter who's in the army. Not my daughter who just came off active duty. No, just that lowly soldier over there. Like I'm some random security guard who wandered in and pinched a vol au vent. And the room? Oh, they laughed. Because haha, how hilarious. A decorated servicewoman getting roasted by her own father at a charity gala. It's practically the British dream. I didn't move. Not a flinch. I've faced actual mortars with less emotional damage. Inside, chaos. Full internal monologue of, did he seriously just, he did. He actually did, okay. Okay, cool. Lovely. Where's the fire exit? My brother nearly spat his drink laughing. My sister did this awkward laugh-clap hybrid. Like she wasn't sure if this was banter or a mental breakdown in progress. Mom stared at her wine glass like it was going to offer her an escape tunnel. Me, I just smiled. Because when you've been properly trained in staying calm under fire, you know that sometimes silence is the loudest bomb you can drop. And trust me, I was about to go nuclear. Oh. Did he just? No, surely not. Wait. Yep, he did, loud into a mic, with enthusiasm. Smiling like he'd just landed the world's greatest one-liner, like he expected applause, or maybe a BAFTA. Because publicly disowning your child over dinner rolls is apparently comedy now. I half expected someone to throw a bouquet. And the room? They laughed. Not even that awkward, polite chuckle we Brits do when someone tells a joke that smells faintly of trauma. No, this was proper belly laughter. Like I'd turned up in clown shoes and face paint instead of a bloody uniform. Apparently, being the only one of his children who didn't spend their 20s in Bali, discovering healing crystals, or pushing dodgy NFT courses on TikTok, is now a punchline. God forbid I chose service over selling overpriced almond flour on Etsy. God forbid I signed up for deployment, instead of slapping my name on a probiotic smoothie brand. God forbid I didn't marry a man with a boat. Honestly, the way he said it, lowly soldier, and you'd think I'd been caught working the night shift at Greg's with a prison tag, not defending the country, not surviving things most of these velvet jacket-wearing parasites couldn't stomach on Call of Duty. And I just stood there, frozen, but not in that Disney princess way, more in the am I in a fever dream or is this just my family again kind of way. My mind's racing, but my body's in full Ministry of Defense autopilot. Just breathe. Don't react. Don't slap anyone. You're in uniform. Smile and suppress like a proper Brit. My brother's pissing himself laughing. Because obviously, he's never met a punchline he wouldn't sell for clout. My sister? Doing that thing where she laughs but also looks at me like, "Are you okay, babe?" while offering absolutely no actual support. Mom has adopted the look down and pretend to be fascinated by the soup tactic. Coward. And I'm just there, wishing I had a pint, a kebab, and a full-blown identity crisis to distract me. The worst part? I wasn't even surprised. This is the man who once told a family friend that I'd joined the army because she fancied a uniform and didn't get into art school. Which, for the record, I did. I just didn't want to spend 3 years sketching bowls of fruit and crying about it in Weatherspoons. But this was next-level mortification. Front row seats to my emotional unraveling, courtesy of a man who thinks banter is just cruelty with a glass of red in hand. And I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I storm out? Why didn't I chuck my drink at his face and go full EastEnders? Because I'm a soldier, not a soap character. And because when you've survived actual combat, you learn to wait, to strike clean. And trust me, my time was coming. But in that moment, I stood there, burning with a shame that wasn't even mine, and thinking, wow, imagine being the only person in this room who's ever been shot at, and somehow still the biggest joke in the building. Cheers, Dad. Raise a glass to that. On the outside, I was all chin up, shoulders back, and textbook composure. On the inside, full DEFCON 1, emotions doing the Macarena. 1 part humiliation, 2 parts rage, and a little sprinkling of I really should have just stayed in the barracks and watched Bake Off repeats. I saw red, then beige, because, and I cannot stress this enough, it was a room full of Tories in beige. Beige suits, beige smiles, beige morals. The kind of people who think diversity means having one labor voter at the table for balance. You know the type. They say things like, I'm not racist, but, and have a gluten allergy that mysteriously disappears when they're in Marbella. My sister looked horrified. The kind of horrified that says, this is so embarrassing, but also please don't cause a scene because I've got a brand deal riding on this event. She gave me that look. You know the one. The don't murder dad in front of the silent auction look. My brother, absolutely wetting himself into his Waitrose grade champagne. Because of course he was. He's the family golden boy. All hair gel and high-interest investments. And he's never met a cruel joke he didn't forward to his WhatsApp group titled Lads Who Own Property. And Mum did what she always does. She stared off into the middle distance, like a woman who spiritually relocated to the Côte d'Azur. Glass of white wine in one hand, smile fixed like a shop mannequin, eyes screaming, I married a walking Daily Mail headline, and now I sleep in separate rooms with a Kindle. But me? I smiled. Because here's the thing they forget about soldiers. We're not just trained to run or fight or iron shirts within an inch of their lives. We're trained to observe, to wait, to calculate. You don't survive war zones by lobbing your emotions around like it's a Love Island recoupling night. You survive by knowing exactly when to detonate. And this? This was no longer just a gala. This was a battlefield, with volovants. So I stood there smiling, sipping my lukewarm fizz like it was liquid dignity, and while the room clinked glasses and Dad preened like he'd just nailed his big stand-up debut, I made a decision. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to storm out dramatically and trip over a cheese trolley. No. I was going to burn this whole facade to the bloody ground, with grace, with flair, and with a piece of A5 printer paper that would go down in family history. Because if you're going to explode, you may as well do it in front of the governor. You know that moment in a heist film when the thief strolls through the lobby like they own the place? Because they know exactly how this ends? Yeah, that was me. Except instead of diamonds, I was carrying emotional devastation folded neatly into A5, 1 foot in front of the other. Straight back, blank face. No dramatic music, no hair flick, no slow-mo pan up to my cheekbones. Just the steady, terrifying stillness of someone who's run out of both fucks and social grace. The room went silent. I mean proper church funeral GCSE exam hall silent. You could hear someone's Spanx creak under pressure. Someone dropped a canapé, probably foie gras, or whatever rich people force-feed their guests. I passed the flutes of Prosecco, The fake friends in faux furs. The uncles with LinkedIn bios longer than their marriages. I walked straight up to the stage where my father, the great Sir Richard of Condescension, was still holding the mic like it was an Oscar for best ego, and I just slipped him the paper. No words, no melodrama. Not even a "you'll regret this," because he would. But I wasn't about to waste breath explaining emotional consequences to a man who thinks empathy is a type of hummus. Just a nod. Polite, British, cold enough to refrigerate a lasagna. And then I turned. Not in a flouncy Love Island, you'll never see this bum again sort of way. No dramatic heel turn. No clutching of pearls. No stilettos flung like javelins. Just controlled, calculated, dignified exit. The kind of calm that unsettles rich people. Because they're used to theatrics, screaming, lawsuits, tabloid headlines. Not this. Not being ignored by someone who's clearly done. Apologizing for their existence. I passed the string quartet, who had stopped playing. I passed the woman in the sequined gown who whispered, "Is she okay?" As if I'd just stormed out of a midsummer murder scene. I passed my sister, who was still frozen like someone had just told her gluten was back in bread, and I walked straight through that overpriced, overdecorated, overly beige room of backpatting bellends, through the marble lobby that smelled faintly of money and regret, and out into the night. And who was waiting outside? The governor, in the flesh. In a sensible coat, with the kind of amused smile that said, "Well, that was more fun than a ribbon cutting." No words, just a glance. And I walked with him. Because sometimes, you don't need a mic to make a scene. Sometimes, you just need one well-timed note and the audacity to leave before the fireworks start. Mic dropped. Yes, that governor. Big name, bigger presence. Smelled like sandalwood and democratic process. The kind of man who shakes hands firmly and actually listens, not just until it's his turn to monologue, about his second home in the Cotswolds. We'd been chatting earlier. Real conversation. None of the usual what regiment. Oh, must be character-building crap I usually get from middle-aged men named Rupert. He was genuinely interested. Veterans' mental health, reintegration, real policies, not just photo ops with sad Labradors. He looked me in the eye, which, coming from a man who'd probably dined with 3 different prime ministers and a minor royal last month, was borderline revolutionary. So when I walked out, fuming and frozen in equal measure, he followed. Didn't ask, just gently offered. "Can I give you a lift?" he said, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I said yes, obviously, because if the universe hands you a chariot of poetic vengeance with heated seats and you get in. Now picture this. Me, in uniform, governor beside me, both of us gliding away in a government-issued black car, while the charity gala fizzles behind us like an undercooked M&S microwave meal. If my father's head could have exploded from sheer British embarrassment, the velvet curtains would have been redecorated in a tasteful shade of crimson. The man who once said, "Networking is about optics," had just witnessed his soldier daughter become the optics, and not the kind he could spin in a newsletter with bullet points and bar graphs. No, this was unscripted, uncontrolled, unfather-approved. I didn't look back, because I didn't need to. The sound of awkward clapping, a dropped flute of Prosecco, and my mother gasping like she'd just seen someone eat pudding before cheese told me everything I needed to know. Inside, my siblings were probably deciding whether to side with Blood or Brand. Spoiler, they picked Brand. Every time. Can't lose that influencer discount code, can they? But out there, in that car, with the governor, of all people, asking me what kind of initiatives actually help ex-service personnel, I felt something that's rare in my family. Respected, not tolerated gracefully, not patronized or weaponized at family dinners as our brave little trooper. Just seen. And yes, I know it shouldn't take a minor government official validating your entire existence to feel worthy. But welcome to British families. We don't do unconditional love, we do silent disappointment and cashmere. So I sat there in the back of that sleek, state-funded exit vehicle and thought, well then, that went better than therapy. Let's rewind a few dramatic footsteps to that folded piece of smug stationery I so casually slipped into his hand. No grand speech. No "you'll regret this, father." Just pure cold admin warfare. The note said, and I quote, "Happy fundraising, Dad. Maybe remind the donors that your lowly soldier just declined the ministry's offer to make your charity an official partner. Fool away. And because I was raised in a middle class, home where emotions were banned, but manners were weaponized, I ended it with, regards, and a smiley face. Arial, 11-point single-spaced, because pettiness is best served formally, with correct grammar and the emotional warmth of a parking fine. Now picture it. My father still mid-stage, still marinating in the afterglow of his deeply unfunny dig about me. He opens that note expecting what, an apology? A resignation letter from the military, perhaps. A thank you for dragging my boots through a room full of khaki disrespecting hedge fund goblins. Instead, boom. 1 sentence, 3 bombs. 1. His lowly child holds actual institutional clout. 2. That clout was going to benefit his beloved vanity charity. That clout is now gone, and he's the reason. I politely turned down the ministry's offer to make his charity an official partner. An offer he'd spent 2 years schmoozing, golfing and LinkedIn stalking his way toward. Gone with 1 signature, mine. And yes, I know it's petty. I know war is serious, trauma is real, and I should rise above. But I was raised by a man who once withheld my uni rent payment because I rolled my eyes at Christmas. So forgive me if my moral compass sometimes takes the long way round. My brother told me later, between gulps of Dom Perignon, he didn't pay for, that Dad just stood there, staring at the note like it had personally insulted his cufflinks. Mom tried to pretend it wasn't happening. She does that a lot. It's basically her hobby. She once ignored a kitchen fire because she thought it might lead to drama. And the donors? Apparently, they suddenly remembered they had early mornings and other events. One woman tripped on her own anxiety trying to get to the exit. Look, I didn't want to humiliate him. Well, it may be a little. But what I really wanted was balance. Because if you're going to mock someone in front of a crowd, maybe make sure they're not holding the career equivalent of a flamethrower behind their back. So yes, I weaponized a rejection letter. I weaponized punctuation, and I did it with manners. Because in this family we don't shout. We don't cry. We ruin reputations in business casual fonts. Quick, sticky, and guaranteed to ruin someone's reputation. By morning, the press were circling like seagulls around a dropped chip. All it took was one blurry iPhone video on some overexcited intern. Probably posted it for clout. And now, boom. Front page. Prime scandal real estate. Disgraced charity chair publicly mocks decorated daughter. Catchy headline. Alliterative. Sounds like something out of a BBC drama. Right before the sad, piano music kicks in. He tried to spin it, of course. Tried to frame the whole thing as a lighthearted joke. You know, like when your dad says you're an utter disappointment, but with a smile. Apparently, if you chuckle while emotionally eviscerating someone, it's fine. Poor man thought he could PR his way out of it. Gave a limp apology on Radio 4 that sounded like he was reading it at gunpoint. While being force-fed a lemon, he said it was all in jest, really. I have nothing but respect for my daughter's service. It was a moment of misjudged humor, right? Because publicly branding your only child who's not on her, third failed marriage and flogging turmeric pills online, as lowly and as classic dad banter and the nation did not find it funny. Turns out people actually quite like it when women in uniform aren't ridiculed by their own families on a live mic. Weird that. Veterans groups piped up. Mumsnet went full feral. Some ex-Royal Marine called him a wet lettuce with a superiority complex on GB News, which honestly might be the most accurate review he's ever had. Meanwhile, my inbox was a war zone. Old schoolmates I hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered I existed. Saw the clip, mate. Iconic. You always were, savage lol. Can I send it to my cousin? She works at the Daily Mail. Even Aunt Janet from Basingstoke, who once said I looked a bit butch in boots, sent me a voice note saying she was proud. I nearly rang 999. But let's be clear. It wasn't just about me. It was about every black sheep, every overlooked sibling, every kid who didn't fit the glossy Christmas card, every child who got an eye roll instead of applause, because they chose reality over respectability. So no, it wasn't just a joke. It was years of being the side dish to my siblings' flambéed nonsense, finally flipping the table. And if the punchline was me, well, this time I punched back. With facts, with timing, with government-grade petty, and oh, the irony. He built his entire reputation on honor, dignity, and service to others, then got metaphorically pantsed by the one child who actually lived by those values. But sure, Dad. Tell the press it was all a misunderstanding. Tell them your lowly soldier just has no sense of humor. Meanwhile, I'll be over here polishing my medals and watching your LinkedIn endorsements evaporate in real time. One second they were all family unity and shared Spotify Premium. The next, it was every privileged parasite for themselves. My sister, the one who thinks a Pilates class is a personality, went full PR crisis mode, posted an Instagram story in soft focus, beige cardigan, holding a mug like it was filled with healing energy instead of oat milk. Sometimes, the hardest lessons come from within. Wishing everyone kindness today. Right. Because you weren't in the front row clapping when Dad called me a lowly soldier. But sure, go off, Gwyneth. Meanwhile, my brother, the one who once tried to launch a podcast called Bro and Flow about masculinity and smoothies. He took to LinkedIn, naturally, wrote a 12-paragraph essay titled Why Humility Matters, Leadership Lessons from Family Conflict. A piece so sanctimonious it could have been printed on quinoa paper and blessed by a monk. He even tagged Brene Brown. I threw up in my mouth. Mom? The eternal swan, all grace and zero accountability. She booked a spontaneous wellness retreat to Portugal, citing my nerves like she's a Jane Austen. Character recovering from a fainting spell, said she needed time to reflect. Translation: time to sip wine near a tiled pool and pretend she didn't marry. A man with the emotional range of a stale crumpet. And Dad? Well, Dad cried. On live radio. And not like a single tear rolls down the noble cheek. No. We're talking full-on wet, wheezing regret in the middle of the BBC's Sunday Matters with Richard. The host tried to segue into traffic updates, and Dad was still sobbing about how cruel the internet can be to good men. Cruel? Mate, you handed the internet a loaded musket and announced your weakest child. What did you expect? A standing ovation? Still, I'll admit it, that bit was oddly satisfying. Not because I enjoy watching grown men unravel like dodgy fairy lights, but because for once, I wasn't the family embarrassment. No, that title now belonged to a man in a tailored waistcoat, dabbing his eyes with a linen pocket square, trying to convince Radio 4 that mocking your war vet daughter was somehow an emotional misunderstanding. Sure, Dad, and I suppose the Falklands was a long-form family counseling session. The whole thing turned into one of those moments you'd swear was satire. Except it wasn't. It was real. It happened. And the group chat silent. Not even a passive-aggressive gif from Cousin Haley. Just tumbleweed and digital shame. Oh, darling. While the family was busy imploding like a badly built conservatory during a mild breeze, I was having tea with the governor. Yes, that governor. Not a euphemism. Not a Tinder date. An actual official man with medals, moral compass, and eyebrows that do the serious face when discussing policy. We sat in a quiet little garden with silver spoons and moral clarity. He asked me about my work with veterans. I gave him actual statistics and didn't once quote Churchill. Shocking. I know. A woman speaking about defense policy without accidentally using the phrase, boots on the ground or boys will be boys. And would you believe it? It worked. Turns out not being a pompous twit pays off sometimes. He liked the proposal. Said it had integrity and heart. 2 words my father avoids like tax declarations. By Friday, the Veterans Initiative was greenlit. Full pilot program rolling out across 3 boroughs. Boots, funding, mental health support, the lot. I even got a proper email from the ministry, with actual praise. In full sentences. And no one called me lowly once, which felt weird, honestly. I almost missed the passive aggression. Oh, and I've been scheduled for a visit to the palace. Yes, in that palace. The one with the corgis, the awkward ceremonial sword-waving, and the constant smell of damp velvet and suppressed resentment. Apparently, lowly soldiers make decent leaders after all. Imagine that, a woman, with battlefield trauma and a working brain, leading something meaningful. What a plot twist. Meanwhile, my father's still crying on air and wondering how the family group chat became a digital ghost town, and I'm just here, sipping Earl Grey in an overpriced suit, trying not to smile too smugly, because apparently, when you survive both war zones and dinner with your family, you earn a bit of peace, and a biscuit, or at the very least, a palace invite in the moral high ground, which, for the record, pairs beautifully with petty revenge and a bit of lemon drizzle.